Hi, everyone, and welcome to Fire and Forte. And today I am with Lucy Rogers. Hi, Lucy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Not a problem. Hello.
Now, there are so many ways that I could introduce you. I could say that you're an engineer, a chartered engineer. I could say that you're a TV presenter and judge. I could say that you're a research fellow, an innovation expert, and a author, but also a very nearly astronaut. Oh, I think that is incredible. How would you describe yourself?
Depends who's asking usually. I used to be an inventor with a sense of fun because I like making things and solving problems. But yes, it really depends on who's asking and what I'm trying to do because my experiences are so broad and I can turn my hands to an awful lot of things. So it's like, what income do I need now? Where can I get that from?
So innovation also with generating income is another one. So inventor with fun and a flair for generating income.
I
Great.
wouldn't say a huge amount of income.
Well, let's talk about the application to go into space. So my understanding is that you've applied to be an astronaut twice. Is that right? Can you take us through your background and also what that involves?
Okay, so I'm a mechanical engineer by training. So did my degree, ended up I was sponsored, so I had industrial training in big company Rolls-Royce. And then I ended up at a small company doing some more research for them and got a PhD in bubbles, in fluid dynamics. I actually got a high-speed video camera and I saw how bubbles were made. And this was the first time someone put a high-speed video camera onto bubbles. And so I have a PhD in bubbles. From that, I was looking in the computer industry, looking at computer consultancy when the call for astronauts came out about 2008, I think. And I thought, well, I tick a lot of these boxes, but again, I fall through the cracks. So back then it was from the European Space Agency. Are you military? Tick all these boxes. Are you academic? Tick all these boxes. The industry wasn't really there. It was like a bit, you're either one or the other. But I thought, well, actually, no, I've got a PhD, so it asks that, and I'm within the age limit, and I've got that, and yes, I've tried a few of these things, so I thought, I know I'm in with a chance here. I'm in with a chance. So I wrote my CV and I wrote the application, and I didn't know anyone else who was applying, so showed my CV to a few friends, and then eventually I got the thanks but no thanks. Nothing. Didn't get invited to interview. Nothing. So that was when Tim Peake from the UK got in and became an astronaut, Samantha Cristoforetti from Italy. So I was like, okay, put that one to the back burner. I'd just written a book on rocket science at the time as well. So I thought I knew quite a lot about about space. So that had just come out, just as the call came out. I'm like, yes, I'm in. No. So otherwise, getting my nose back out of joint from from not being even invited. When the call came around again a couple of years ago, and I thought, oh, I'm just under the age limit. The age limit was 50. I'm just under the age limit. Great. I'm going to apply. I'm going to get further this time. And it's like, I get seasick on a merry-go-round. So, I thought, I'm probably not going to pass the medical, but hey, I'm going to see how far I can go with this. Wanted someone else to check my CV. Look, dug out the CV from last time and thought, oh, yeah, no, ooh, ouch. I'm not surprised they didn't ask me. Oh, no, God, did I really think that was going to help? Oh, and I thought, well, if I'd had someone who'd actually looked through the application thing and told me, Lucy, do you want to say that? Are you sure? So I put a call out on various forums, on a couple of the webcasts that were going around saying, look, I'm setting up. Do any other women applying want to swap CVs? I'm setting up a forum. Let's all have a chat. So we set up a video call the first time, about 50 people come on. And then we set up a Discord group, so a forum for any women who wanted to apply to be an astronaut could then join. And we set up all of the different things. It's like, okay, this is general, introduce yourself. And it was women from across Europe because one of the requirements was you had to be fluent in English and have B1 level. So that was, for me, it was just above what I'd done at age 15 at school. So a bit beyond sort of school level in a second language. They wanted you to have at least a master's in a science subject. you could have done a pilot route, you could have done the academia route, but they were also looking at industry route. They wanted you to have had some experience abroad. It wasn't one of the absolutely you must, but it would be nice if you spent at least 8 weeks in a chunk in another country. Had you lived in anywhere survival type situations, Antarctica springs to mind. Had you done anything that required a lot of safety? So they were looking at firefighters is one of them, but also scuba diving counts as that you actually have to be aware of all the different things that happen there. So anyways, we ended up with about 350 women on this forum. And then every time people got invited through, so there were 23,000 applicants for the first, for this astronaut thing. 1,000 of them got through to the first round of interviews. And I was one of those 1,000. Woohoo! So went to Cologne and did a whole load of computer tests and apparently failed miserably on joystick control and my memory, which is fair enough on joystick control. I didn't play enough games as a child, and my memory is not quite what they were after. But so every time people got through, they'd let me know, and I'd set up a separate locked group for them so they could discuss their own things without, and no one told anyone the answers, but it was like, oh, you'll probably want to bring your own water flask because there's a tank there, but no cups, or bring a jacket because I got cold. And to get from the hotel to the test center takes 10 minutes walk, and it's this way. Those kind of things that you just really love. And the people who went first were so lovely in giving that information to those who came behind. But even before we'd got to that stage, everyone was like, "Yep, swap CVs. Has anyone done this? I've done this." I said, "You've got so many women that, well, I did this, this, and this, and this, but I don't think it's. Oh, I don't." And everyone else is going, "You've done what? Wow, that's amazing! Yes, put it in." So when we look at our own careers and we're comparing it to our peers, we're like, "Well, yeah, but they've done that and they've done that." You forget that someone over there hasn't done any of that. So that was just amazing. And the whole group is still going. So 2 or 3 got through to become astronauts, either reserves or actually being trained now. But the rest of us are still on that forum, still talking to each other, still providing help. We've still got the rant channel that self-deletes after a couple of hours. So we can say anything you want on it. It's like, and then just get it out there, and all the other women go, "Oh yeah, me too. Oh, I'm with you." Ooh. We've all got the same sort of problems. "Oh, I said something in a meeting, and then 10 minutes later, a man said it, and he got the credit." And one of my customers won't talk to me. I'll only talk to my my junior colleague because he's a man and I'm not. Is this stuff still happening? It was happening 20, 30 years ago when I was in engineering, and it's like, it's still happening. The overt sexism isn't there anymore, but the underlying stuff's still there.
It's ended up being a support group in a sense, but with this shared passion for wanting to go to space, which is so empowering, because not only have you given these specifics on CVs, I think as well there's the support and the confidence boost with a group of cheerleaders around you saying, "We are your peers, and that piece of experience that you've got or that thing that you did is really cool." So I mean, I'm wondering if those 3 astronauts could possibly regard that group as being a huge help for them to actually have got that far, because there's not many situations where you've got 349 women cheering you on and giving you some help to get to that space. It's a really
to be fair with those who got through, I suspect they would have had other support mechanisms as well. But yes, the 349 others of us, or 347 others, whatever, it has been really good and really useful. And you can see some people have like, "Oh, well, because of this and because of that, and because of you lot supporting me, I'm going to go and I'm changing my career to do." And some are off to do masters in space science, and some are off just traveling. Some have gone, "I'm going on an expedition. Anyone want to come?" Or, "I happen to be in this town. Is anyone here?" Or, "I'm at this conference. Is anyone here?"
That sense of community is incredible. And what
Yeah.
kind of background did the women come from? I mean, you talked about you could go through different ways to become an astronaut,
Yeah.
academia, industry, etc. Were there any far outliers that came from other areas?
Difficult to tell because I didn't check everyone's CV. A few people from the medical background, a lot of biology people, with, time in labs and doing things with, I don't know, I'm an engineer. I'm not used to squishy engineering, but there are a lot of people come through the biology side. A couple through the lawyer, or had maybe an engineering and law combined interests. So there was quite a few who had a bachelor's in one subject and then a master's in something completely different. So that was also interesting to see.
Really interesting. And if you'd have got through, what were you really hoping what would you have loved to do? What's your dream to do in
Ah, well,
space?
I want to go to the moon.
Yeah, and then is there some specifics that you actually want to?
Oh
Is it
no, I think I just wanted to float about in space and go to the moon, which is probably not what I would have told the European Space Agency had they asked.
and that didn't scare you at all? Or because you've not only written a book, but had all of the knowledge around the book, is if you could explain the interest in space that you've got specifically?
I love to learn, and I'm always trying to learn. And once upon a time, way back when I was doing the PhD, I got contacted by BBC TV. We want someone who can tell where they are in the world from the stars. And I'm like, oh, I'd love to be able to do that. I can't. I'd love to be able to do it. So off I take myself on an astronomy course and start learning about the stars that way. This horse has bolted. I'm not going to get that role. But I'm like, well, no, but I want to know. So went on the astronomy. So that's when I really started getting interested in space. And then after my PhD, I was thinking, oh, I'm not really. I was still doing the computer stuff, but I'm thinking, I want to do the computer stuff part time. But I want to keep my hand in with engineering. So I volunteered at a company that was making rockets, making a rocket for the X Prize. So that was back in the day when we hadn't sent anything up into space, brought it down again, and then within 2 weeks sent it up again. So there was this big prize to do this thing that Virgin Galactic eventually won. So I started playing with rockets. And I said, well, I know an awful lot about this bit, but I don't know about that bit, and I don't know about that bit. How do I? Where's the book? And they would go, all right, here's the tome of books about this, all full of equations. Here's the tome of book about. And I'm like, I know I'm an engineer and I like maths, but I have to sit and work it out. There's some people who can read a mathematical equation, like someone can read sheet music and just see what the tune is. And I have to go, oh, that's a G, and that's an A, and that's. So I have to work through the maths. So I want something without maths. So I decided to write the book because it was a book I wanted to read. So that's sort of how I got really into rocket science. And so it was from that astronomy, then into the working with some spacecraft and finding out all about it.
That's amazing, and I'm gonna have to say that my dad has got the book, and that's one of the ways in which you've been introduced and is a big fan of it. But if you could, would you mind breaking down the book, both what it includes, not every bit, the broad themes, but also for you as an author, how long that took you to write and research?
I thought it was going to take 6 months. Ooh, 3 years later. Unknown unknowns. You just don't know what you don't know. And there was so much involved. So it's basically everything that you need to know before you can put a rocket in space. So how high up is space? Where is space? How does a satellite stay up when it's in orbit? How do you move it when it's in orbit? It's not just a case of point it in one direction and push off, because that doesn't work. You've got orbits around, and then if you push off in one place, you actually go further on the other side of the planet, and it's like it's not obvious and it's not logical. I spent a long time with a tennis ball and a roll of sellotape just trying to work out, okay, so if the orbit is like this, then I've gone into okay, so how does the rocket engine work? How do you get fuel to the rocket? How does it not melt? When can you launch it? What's a launch window? How do you get it up there? Oh, what happened? Why have you got to have 3 different stages to get up? who first wrote about this? Who first did this? And then we can move on to, okay, so where are we going to go? What are we going to look at? What happens to your body in space? If you're an astronaut, what happens? How come you float about? How come your eyes get puffy? Your face gets puffy? You've seen astronauts, they're sort of like usually crunched over with very puffy faces. And that's because the fluid isn't draining down to your feet anymore. Why do they get so many kidney stones? Oh, so they don't need the calcium so much. It actually comes out, the calcium starts dissolving out the bones, and then they get kidney stones, or some had possibility of. So there's all these things that what happens, and then where are we going in the future? Where can we go? What can we do?
It sounds really interesting and also something that I might be able to get my head round, but I'm not too sure. Maybe I'll give it a good go.
It's all
Audience.
without the maths. So I've written
Mhm.
it with a lot of, and this is like such and such that I can relate to, because I didn't want to have to plow through the equations.
You've talked about using your initiative. If there was no book, you actually went and wrote it. And now you might know why there is no book, but surely that is now paving the way. Is it encouraging for you to see more investment in space outside of NASA? With you've already mentioned Virgin and also Elon Musk's, is it SpaceX?
Yes, yeah.
Is
So
that
yes,
encouraging and exciting for you?
it's very exciting because it was getting a little. We've done the same sort of thing. The books I was reading for my research were 50 years old, because actually rocket science doesn't change. However, it has, and there's a lot has changed since that book got published. Actually, in 2008-9, an awful lot has changed. So it's really exciting to see is that actually we're making progress again. We're doing stuff. We're moving forward, and we have now learned so much. But we're also learning so much in space. The astronauts are effectively human laboratories up there. And so you may have seen some of the little videos of the astronauts, right, I'm taking blood now. And we say, oh, why? What are they doing? Or, oh, I'm looking at these cells or these cultures or these plants. We're growing these plants in space because we want to know what happens in microgravity. What happens if you're floating about all the time? And so that's, it's not just the mechanics. I mean, the principles are still the same. You still have to put some energy in to move, but those things have improved, but also some of the actual reasons behind why we're going and what are we doing and what are we trying to find out when we're there. It's all, very exciting.
And hopefully could open up some more opportunities to send you back up in space. And maybe you've been practicing with your joystick, some gaming.
I'm going to be too old by the next call.
Because how often do they do the calls?
Well, it was 2008 and 2020 or something. So yeah, 12 years.
Sounds like a waste to me. We definitely need you in the headquarters directing the astronauts.
Well, there's also so many other roles in the space industry that aren't astronauts. I mean, astronauts are the one that grabs the media attention, but there are just so many other roles, from the coordinating, the whole books. There's like, well, I didn't know there were so many parts to actually putting a rocket into space. Well, people are specializing in each of those parts. So there's so many things to do there.
Is that a little bit of a misunderstanding, do you think, more broadly, that space industry equals astronauts, and that therefore the space industry could potentially attract so many more people to work in it? Because you've already talked about all the different tests that you can do in space. Are there other more accessible areas that other people could get into, and what kind of areas are those?
And one of the fascinating things I found, one of my British friends, he was when the Mars rovers were first on Mars, and and NASA was making everything freely available, and he was downloading the pictures and he was stitching them all together and he was making these lovely panoramas. He then got employed by NASA to do this for a living. He was just doing it for fun in his back bedroom and then posting them saying, hey, look at this. And I was like, oh yeah, that. And people have asking the amateurs, okay, so we've got this spacecraft and it's going to Saturn. What are the good photo opportunities? So when you've seen the rings of Saturn, you through the rings, you see Saturn, and then right in the distance, you see a spot. You say, that's Earth. And it's these people are like, yeah, no, this is our interest. We're trying to line up how everything goes. So you've got all the much more creative and artistic eye going along there, as well as the pure engineering. But you've also got the legal. What happens in space? What happens if your spacecraft blows up? What happens if you make a whole load of rubbish in space And that rubbish is now going around very, very fast. Something the size of a cherry going in orbit around the Earth, if that hits you, it's got the same amount of energy as a hand grenade going off. Yeah, you can imagine all these satellites up there and they're whizzing around. It's like, ah. And you see, you've got to track them. So you've actually got air traffic control of all these satellites. And then you've got the secret satellites that no one knows about because other countries have put them up and they're all the spy satellites or whatever's up there. And okay, how do we track the things that we can't see? So we're using, we're actually managing to see some of these things using various radar or how they occult, so that they go in front and make a star blink. Why did that star blink then? What happened to make that star blink? So there's 1001. You've got all the biologists thinking, okay, what experiment can we do in space? Because there are things, and I don't actually know the specifics, but the cancer cells react differently in microgravity. Things grow differently in microgravity. Could we use this? You age differently in microgravity. The cells age differently. It's like, what? What's going on? What's going on with this? So it's not just the science. I mean, and then you've got the people who actually communicate this to the rest of the world. So I actually had one of my roles once was I was writing the European Space Agency would send me, here's the manual for this instrument that's on this satellite. Can you put something in 500 words that can go on the website that explains what this thing does? So when it was an X-ray telescope trying to get in the X-rays, and it's like, and you can't just use big mirrors. It's like a micro pore, something or other, something. It's like, I have no idea. I read the paper and I'm like, I had to Google every single word in the first sentence of this paper. What is it?
That's eye-opening as well to know that there's scientists who are very well aware that we need some layman's terms to understand this world that is so it's got broad appeal. Everyone's very curious about it, but
Yeah.
actually there's a massive gap between the way in which you lot speak to each other and how someone else would understand it. So from your writing,
Even between the mechanical engineers talking to the biologists. And, I was in a meeting the other day full of biologists and I'm like, no, I don't understand what you just said. I have no idea what that was.
yeah, so there's an ability, there's a need there to translate even between engineers and different groups. But I think that a lot of the examples that you talked about there shows how inquisitive we could be about space. Ask
Mhm.
every one of those questions: why a face is puffy, what happens if I throw a cherry up, and those kind of things. In
And
terms,
who's the person who sews the spacesuit? Yeah, I saw a job advert for seamstress is probably the wrong word. The person who sews. Yeah, of course, space suits and stuff. It's like, yeah, who designs that spacesuit?
so is an inquisitive mind and a curious mind, is that something that you have seen in other successful either engineers or people in the space industry? And has it helped in your, is it a key part in your career which is really focused around innovation, do you think?
Yeah, I've always been curious. When I was when I was a child, my favourite program in the UK was called Play School, and every part of it, you'd go through one of the windows. We're going through the window, and through the round window, we're going to a button factory. And I'm like, yeah, oh, buttons made. I want to know. I want to know. And so every part of my career, I mean, it's only by looking backwards over my career that I can join the dots and say, oh, actually, yeah, I wanted to be an engineer because I wanted to make things. I wanted to see how things worked. I then did my PhD was how bubbles made. How do things work? How does that work? And later on, making things, gadgets and gizmos with electronics. I want to make something. I want to make this thing. How do I solve this problem? And so, actually, everything that I have done has been curiosity based. Yeah. And now I'm aware of that. It's only taken me till I'm nearly 50 to make myself aware of that. And that is now how I can focus on it. It's like, okay, that is what I love doing. How do I do more of that?
So the innovation is a great example of that because you're able to innovate in the private sector. Am I right? You've had and worked with a lot of private sector clients. Can you talk
Yeah.
about some of the work that you've done that you've found maybe the most exciting or engaging?
Some of the things have been more I say academic based. So one company wanted to know what was the risk of being hit by space debris for their spacecraft. And so I was working with the team who'd written software for these space debris tracking and stuff, and saying, okay, what are these? So that was one of the more responsible jobs I've had, because actually, if you put people in a spacecraft, you're going to want to know if it's going to get hit by debris and be effectively exploded like a hand grenade. So that was really quite worrying. As oh, have I got this right? Have I got that right? But some of them I've been working on much more fun projects, because I know that I like fun. And one of my earliest projects, I was working, I'd made, because I'm a geek, and when I was doing electronics in university, didn't understand what is the point. I don't get it. Don't like it. And this was the 90s. So bring on the Raspberry Pi computer, which is a credit card size computer, about 25, 30 pounds. And so children can actually use it, learn how something works, work out how to get the hardware to work. So most things at the moment are on the screen, and you can do things on screen, but you're not going to give your nice iMac to little Sarah to say, there you go play with it and hack it apart and take it apart and see how it works inside. You don't do that, but a 20, 30 pound one, you might. So that's what these things were designed for, but they're so useful. And so I knew someone who, on the Isle of Wight, owned Black Gang China theme park. And they had some robot dinosaurs. And he knew that I'd been playing with these little electronic things. And he said, Lucy, we've got a problem. Our dinosaurs that have all come from China have broken. And it was just before the busy summer six. I'm like, can you come and fix our dinosaurs, please? So I bring together this team of all the geeks that I know. And they've put a call out on Twitter. So, right, we've got dinosaurs. They're going to give us pizza. They're going to give us coffee. They can't afford to pay us anything to touch a tiny theme park. Can't afford to anything else. Who wants to come and play with some robot dinosaurs? And this group of people come down. And we're pulling apart. Everything's like, oh my goodness, look at this piece of electronics from the 80s that's in here. Oh, I wouldn't. And the electricians go, yeah, then we need to replace that bit. But we had people from IBM there who had written some software. And most software coding, it was 10 do this, 20 do that, and then it gets really complex. This was like Lego blocks, and you could say, right, I want it when this button is pressed, I want this to happen, and then this to happen, and then this music to play. And it was all just like Lego blocks. And so the technical team wasn't huge at the park at that time, so they came along. So we had the chefs and the gardeners and anyone who was basically any interest in tech came along with all these geeks that I brought along, and people from IBM, and then the theatre people were also there, and they said, well, what we'd like to do is, once we'd actually fixed the dinosaur, and they were looking at what can we do in the future. Well, what we'd like is when someone walks past the sensor, we don't just want the dinosaur to go raw. We want it to do either raw or growl or this or that. So can we have random? And the IBM people was like, well, we've never been asked for a random node before, Lego block. Let's write one. And so they wrote one. And so within the end of the weekend, we had this new node specifically for Blackgang, but then it was available for everybody. Anyway, so that's how I sort of started into, and I wrote the blog, and someone came along and took video. And so that video went up, and I put that on my website. And sort of that was how I got picked up. And then Raspberry Pi picked it up and said, look, our pies are being used in dinosaurs. And from that, I got asked to do more writing projects. And I discovered I was good at writing basically the recipe. So if you've got your own little toy dinosaur, this is how you can use that code to make your dinosaur do something random when this happens. And you can buy this robot, this little plastic dinosaur. It's a kid's toy for £10 or something. So I could then not sell the thing that I was making, but I could sell the recipe of how to make the thing that I was making. And that's when I was like, this is a thing. I can make fun things. I have to find people who have fun projects. And so a comedy group in my local area, someone had a concertina, and they wanted to just be in the background. And when they pulled the concertina too far, they wanted it to fall apart. And then they go, so it was a visual gag. didn't have any money for it, but he could provide me the concertina, saying I put it all together. I started doing it with electronics. They just proved it wasn't strong enough because he wanted then obviously to be able to put it apart for the next show. And I ended up with kitchen cabinet magnets in there. And it now works. They could afford to pay for the parts. They couldn't afford my time. But then I wrote the whole thing up and sold that to an electronics firm, and they put it on their website and went ahead with that. And so it was from things like that that I then got picked up by IBM and Oracle. And so I started writing things for, being an influencer.
It's an interesting use of the word influencer, but can I just say the variety of the projects that you've worked on, that they must be surprising to some extent to yourself, or is that the life of an inquisitive mind, do you think?
I don't know, I get bored far too easily. Oh, what's new? How's that work? Ooh, what can I do with that? I know with a lot of the basics for the electronic stuff were effectively the same. You have something happens and you want something else to happen afterwards. That's effectively it.
And I'm wondering, because I recently did an AI course, if any of those different outputs can be applied to AI. Have you had any involvement, or do you have much interest in this hugely discussed topic at the moment of artificial intelligence?
I'm very curious about the coding. So I watched a video of a physics professor, and he said, okay, let's put in the age 15 exam into AI. And it came up and it said, okay, it got the right answer, it got the working wrong. Okay, it got the working wrong, it got the wrong answer. So the maths was useless. And then, okay, let's put in the next stage up, the degree level exams. So, okay, yeah, it got that bit right, it got that bit wrong. So it wasn't all great. Okay, now I want it to, one of the other exam questions was write a Python program, computer program that will do this. And he put that in and he's looking at it and going, this is amazing. This is absolutely stunning. And I sent it to one of my other computer geek friends and they said, no, that is stunning. That is amazing coding. So much so that I've heard that a lot of companies have actually banned AIs from, because people are putting proprietary code for code that belongs to the company in to say, can you fix this? And then the AIs are saying, thank you very much. This is our
Yes.
code. We're now
No,
using this
no.
code. So then there's for everything I do open source stuff because basically I can't do it all. So I have to say to my friends, how do I do this? How do I do that? And then we put it all together. And effectively, I've then, because I'm publishing it, I've got a workbook of how to do it. So then they come back to me and said, what was the project that we did this on? Because I need to remember how we did it. And I haven't got, so they're coming back to it. So like, for coding, apparently it is excellent. And my brother even has said, I had this problem that I've been thinking about for 5 years and I couldn't know enough Python to do it. And it's just done it for me in half an hour. And I'm like, woo!
Incredible. And then you think,
Good.
you want to just double check who
Right.
owns that code? I mean, they're talking about
Yeah.
the government.
There's going to be huge problems on this. And writing stuff. Because I asked it, who's Lucy Rogers? Oh, well, Lucy Rogers has written these 4 books. And I was like, I haven't written those books, but I could have done. I could have. That is something that is that's like, ooh, that's scary. Maybe I haven't done yet. Ooh, what does it know? What does it know? So
Obituary.
but I've also used it for so I've also made online communication skills courses. So they're aimed at scientific people. Here's online self-guided courses, how to improve your communication skills and how to present data and this sort of stuff. And I was writing my website for it. And it's another word for buy now. What can I say? Hey, ChatGPT, what can I say? Give me 30 different examples. And it gave me 30 different, buy this now because blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't use that. That one's all right. That one's all right. So it's been brilliant for brainstorming for me. It was like, what can I call my book? It's about such and such and such and such. And it says, here are 30 different examples of what you could call your. And it's like, okay, I like 1, 3, and 7. Can you give me more? Here's another 30 along those. I was like, things that I just, one should do, but you just don't bother doing. You never get to 50 things on a brainstorm. But here are 50 things, and then they feed off to other things. So as long as I'm not, well, I did ask it, who first discovered that birds fly on a thermal? And it gave me this whole stuff with references. Amazing. Then I started Googling these references. They didn't exist. It made it up. Completely and utterly mad. I said, is this true? Oh no. Did you want something true? It's like,
Oh,
Okay.
that's interesting because you do need the human direction to get the right output of ChatGPT to get the titles, but who's actually going to be double checking if those things are right or not? So then it gets into the whole fake news, I was going to say, but it could be so much more
Yeah.
problematic than that, couldn't it?
But it's also great because I can then say, "Oh, I did A, B, and C, and D." Well, write that in a paragraph for me. It writes it in a paragraph. Yeah, no, I did. Yeah, no, I've just changed. But it's when you've got, when you've got a skeleton, it's easier to improve your draft than it is to write the first draft. I'm using it in little bits for write me a draft on this. Okay, now I can pick out the bits that I want, and yes, that and that. I have to be careful that I'm not plagiarizing anyone.
I don't think that's happened. It's okay. You're safe here. I think taking a skeleton plan's fine. You mentioned communication skills. You are a very good communicator. And I don't know whether
Thank
this
you.
is a stereotype or not, but sometimes it can be difficult to understand. We referenced my dad before. Sometimes he goes off on one and I'm not too sure what he's talking about. Is communication something that you've naturally found that you can do and translate these bigger problems into more simplistic? No, is this something that you've worked on?
No, no, not at all. I always thought, well, here's my report. Here's the answer. Well, why are you asking me anything? It's in the report. It's obvious. The maths says it all. Apparently not. I learned. And you have to communicate, and you have to communicate with people who aren't scientists, engineers, and you have to communicate. And it's not just the acronyms, and it's not just that. So, a scientist, the word hypothesis means something that we're testing, and and the rest of the world, it means guess. You know, so, our theory. You've got to guess. No, that's something we're working towards proving. So, it's not just that. It's actually learning. So, and I ended up teaching electronics to a whole bunch of students. And at the end of my lesson, I'm thinking, oh, I bored myself then. What? What are the poor students thinking? I was so bored. And then I realized that, no, I took myself off to Toastmasters International, learn how to speak. And then I realized that I was I had somehow decided that professional meant serious, no fun, no humor. And when I was at Toastmasters, I realized that I naturally try and put humor into things. I naturally put fun into things. But, the brain says, oh, no, fun is this box and professional is work box, and you don't mix the two. And I was like, oh, light bulb moment for me. I can mix the two. Right, now I can be more comfortable giving a talk because I can still do all the facts and figures, but I can add in a robot dinosaur or a fartometer, should I ever so want to, and put these things in. Now, right, okay. So now I've got my basics. How can I improve myself? How can I improve this? So I started TikTok because I knew that I'd been interviewed a lot. Oh, hello, blah, 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 blah. And the camera's over here, but I'm talking to the person over here. I had not ever done videos talking to the camera, talking to the camera hits. And so I was like, right, I'm going to get around this. How am I going to have I get experiences? Okay, feels really cringeworthy. TikTok. I got TikTok and I challenged myself to do 3 videos a day. And I did 3 videos a day for a couple of months, ended up with a viral TikTok and 20, 30,000 followers. And I was like, oh, okay, I've now learned how to talk to the camera. What are these things? So then I was engaged as a visiting professor at Brunel University to teach the students about communication skills and creativity skills, because especially in the sciences, you're taught 2 + 2 is 4. It can never mean anything else. So how do we start being then creatives? If we've always got to follow the book, how can we start breaking out from that and saying, well, what if this, that, and the other? So creativity coming into it. So it's sort of bashed out of us. I speak from personal experience before I have a whole load of engineers crashing down on me saying, oh, we are creative. Anyway, so I've ended up with a 10-point checklist. I was marking we were in lockdown, so I was marking group videos of these students. Oh, so dire. First of all, you'd either get this part of somebody, or you just get their head, or
Oh, that's amazing.
or you'd have them with, I don't know if I could do that. Well, that way around. Yeah. So you've got the window behind you. so I couldn't see them, or they were just muffle, muffle, muffle. Yeah, they're like, okay, here's 10 points. Clean your camera. Have the light in front of you. Use a microphone. And then these 10 points, and it took the students up a grade in presentation skills just by doing these simple things. And I'm like, wow, that is, impressive. But then, once you've got that, it's like, okay, let's start with some storytelling. Let's start with, rather than just getting your point across, how do we, yeah. And so it moved forward on that. But I also had to make the here's a mark scheme for how you mark a presentation. And previous ones go like, was there eye contact? Well, there's a certain portion of engineers who don't like eye contact for various reasons. I'm thinking, actually, it's not eye contact we're after. That's something we can look at and check. But were you engaged? That's actually what we're looking at.
I think it's great that you helped the students with communication and presentation skills. They are undoubtedly so vital. However, you had to do that in front of TV cameras when you were a judge on Robot Wars. What was it like communicating in front of a TV camera?
It was so different and so nerve-wracking. Didn't know what I was talking about. I'd not watched Robot Wars for many years, and I didn't know what these robots were. And oh, can you tell me about the autogyro stabilization of this robot? And I'm like, no, I can't. I don't know anything about it. I had learned that they said, oh, stand on the X, and I'm standing on the X, and I'm thinking, and they said, oh, don't wave your hands about too much because we know we're coming quite close. And so, okay, hands by my side, stand on the X. Watch the video back. No, we'll watch it when it comes out on live TV. And my head's doing this because my feet are stuck on the ground and my hands are stuck on my sides. It has to come out somewhere, and it's come out all over me.
Let that be a watch out then. But it's fair to say, however, the communication that you've worked on got you that far. You would have auditioned. I know that you're very modest. I can tell that already. So I'm sure actually you came across very articulately, if a little bit.
Yeah. It was fun though, because I'd been a bit solid apparently in most of it until they asked me to show how some tools worked to one of the other presenters. And I'm like, and I pick up the angle grinder, and then I'm like, "Hi, and I'm free, and I'm making sparks come up." And the producer said, "You came alive. That is what you're doing." And all the roboteers said, "Oh, that's why she's a judge. She's not one of the academics. She's one of us. She's a maker." And then I twigged, that's why I'm here. And then I relaxed, and then it all became so much easier. But it was actually working out, what am I adding to this?
I think that's great that you can identify the uniqueness. And as you just said earlier about your career and that it's taken up until late 40s to think that actually I'm one of the only people that or my skill and my specialty is pulling some bits together and translating them or seeing something and wanting to fix it because I am so curious. Is that fair to say it takes some time to then bring these together and then you go off and make the most of this realization?
Probably. I'm still in those early stages of making the most of it.
Well, you've taken the first step, I believe, because you've moved into a nomadic life. Is that right?
Again, fortunate position that I can now rent my house out. And so that gives me that security of income. But yes, it means I have no permanent fixed abode in the UK. And so I can go off traveling. And this is what I really wanted to do when I was 21. I did my final year project in Nepal looking at cable cars. And then, as life gets in the way, and then I had a dog, and sadly my dog died last year. So, it's like I have no responsibilities. I am free. I can do my work from wherever I am. Right, let's go try that. And so currently I'm in Thailand. I'm going to Malaysia and Singapore next month. Then I'm going to spend the summer in the UK actually touring the UK, because the UK is actually quite nice. And then I'll just see how it goes. So it's checking, can I do calls like this? Have I got the internet good enough? Have I got the discipline to do it? And will I enjoy it when I'm there?
And how's it going so far?
Loving it.
Is it unlocking the creativity that you hoped it would, or are there any other hopes that you've got for this time?
I realized that I need structure. And if it's not external structure, I've got to start imposing it. And so, the first couple of weeks, I just felt like a blob. I was just blobbing around. I was reading my book. I was sitting on the beach, but it was like yeah, and not getting up till late. And so then I thought, right, I'm going to have to start couch to 5K and jogging again on the beach in the humidity. It's like, oof, don't want to do that. But okay, set my alarm clock for 6:45 in the morning, so it's early enough that I wasn't going to get too hot. So right, this is the structure. 3 times a week, I am going to do this. Okay, I am then going to do, whatever other bits of structure. I always want to see the sunset. So at 6:30, make sure I am out on my porch watching the sunset. So putting these little bits of structure in are actually helping me make sure deadlines help as well. So when my book agent said, "Oh, we really like the pitch in before before the end of the week," it's like, okay, right, I can do an awful lot now.
It's like starting again. It's designing your life really,
Yes.
where you're not restrained or constrained by any other structure. You're able to design it in a way that optimizes yourself, which hopefully that's really delivering and will deliver over the next few weeks and
And
months.
at the moment, it's still an experiment. It's like, is this well? Actually, the humidity and the heat aren't great for me. I'm not at my happiest here physically. So maybe Thailand isn't in the rainy season isn't where I want to be. But yeah, why not go and explore? Why go and find out where I do like and what I do like to do?
It sounds brilliant. I also think it's very good to admit that sometimes it's not perfect because we can all sit there at our desks 9 to 5 and dream of being somewhere else. But then remember that sometimes it's a bit too hot. Sometimes we miss the structure. Don't think that the grass is always greener.
Yeah.
Although it doesn't sound so bad. It sounds like
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm coping. I'm coping.
I have learned so much from this call, from space to how inquisitive we can be about space and how things work and all the different career options in what might traditionally have been seen for engineers and actually the accessibility of them, to the importance of communication and the fact that I think something that you do so well is if you get curious or if you recognize a problem, you go and learn about it. And I think that's very, very, very empowering because we can all do that, I think.
We can, and we're sort of like told you don't have to do it after school. And then for a lot of us, we stop. Or, what's the point? Why do I still need to, why do I need to know how to work out where I am anywhere in the world from where the stars are? I don't. I want to.
So maintaining that inquisitive nature, I mean, it seems like you're constantly buzzing with ideas as well. So
Yeah.
when are you
And that's what I'm focusing on at the moment is I'm actually writing a book. And the book is basically a way to feed my curiosity. It's all about things you see when you look up. So from trees to insects to birds to stars to the weather to lightning strikes to rockets to planes to kites, the whole lot. And I'm looking at, okay, what is it that I saw? So I'm going to Malaysia next month to look at bats coming out of a cave, a million bats coming out of a cave. I speak to the scientists there who first described how bats use echolocation, my feelings about it and how the science works. So it's a little bit of me going to see it and taking you on the journey, then the science of what's actually behind it, and who else is looking at these things and what still don't we know. So it's like, oh, this all ticks every box that I've got, and that's the way that I'm at the moment making what I'm interested in work for me.
Brilliant. And other people that do not really fancy going to a cave and having a million bats fly past them, but do want to know how it works,
Yeah.
they can benefit from that. When do we think the book will be out?
It'll probably be another 18 months before it's out, but
Excellent. Well, I think the Rocket Book is enough to get us all started. So I will link this to this episode. Thank you so much for spending this time with us and just really looking forward to following your nomadic journey and looking out for that book as well.
wonderful. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.